Check, check. Hey, 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 it's working. Mm, mm.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for meeting me and or like meeting with me and inviting me onto the podcast.
Thanks for doing this, Liz. I appreciate you doing this. What was I about to say? Oh, how did rehearsal go?
It was good. Thanks. Yeah, I was meeting with a violinist just in the Boston community. He takes lessons from one of my colleagues at the school that I go to, Longy. I'm a grad student, and he was looking for a pianist to like learn his pieces with, because it's one thing to learn a violin piece, on your own, but another to have the piano accompaniment. So yeah,
That's fun. That's interesting.
yeah,
I'd love
it
to
was
learn more
great.
about that too. So just real quick, I'm gonna do a formal intro kind of on my own after we get done. Um,
Okay.
and could you do me a huge favor? I know that this isn't convenient to do, but is it possible for you to turn your phone or your camera
Yes.
the other way?
And will this be like video recorded? Because I'm at kind of a weird angle, but I could find a better like situation.
I don't none of that bothers me. You see what I got going on back here. I don't that it's going to be out in both formats, audio and video, but I definitely use the video. I'm kind of like you. It
Okay.
looks like
Oh,
you're kind of getting started on your YouTube channel and it's
yes.
going really well, it seems like, and I'm kind of getting started on my YouTube channel as well. So,
Oh, awesome.
catching a little bit
Yeah.
of
We're
traction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a new venture. I used to feel, I mean, I never really was very interested in YouTube because I'm just like, I don't like being in front of a camera and talking to my phone basically like out in public or out in the woods. I'm like, I don't want to be one of those people. But I yeah, I went on a hike in Switzerland last year. I hiked the Swiss Via Alpina and I was like, I don't, no one here knows me. I'm just some anonymous person. I'm going to try this out. And it ended up being kind of fun. It was just like keeping a diary. Then I uploaded it. I'm like, oh, people seem to like it. And it's just fun. I don't know. It's just like a fun new way to interact and share the stuff I'm up to. And it makes a difference. I like, cause I really like to write, and it's one thing to write about it and read a description, but then when you actually show like this is what I'm looking at, or this is, maybe like here are the emotions I'm experiencing, it makes a difference to actually see it.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to, if you don't mind, I want to keep all that in. So we'll just jump right in. Like I said, I'll do that
Oh,
formal intro later.
yeah.
But I want to keep all that in. I love to write too. And you're right about as far as like being able to see what it is that you're describing or see what it is that you might be writing about or that you could be talking about. Have you given, because I'm thinking about all this stuff, so it's really interesting that you bring this up.
Yeah.
Have you thought about writing something, thinking about it, writing it out, and then almost like narrating over the top of video?
Totally. And maybe that's something you're thinking of too, since you're bringing it up. But yeah, even today, I was like, I wonder, I don't know anything about film making, but I was like, what if like took some cool shots or whatever, like some neat video, but then actually, yeah, made it like had some kind of voiceover. And then I'm also a musician. And like, what if and I've been doing this a little bit already, but I was like, what if I, make some atmospheric piano music in the background and make it a whole production? And then
Yeah.
it's like, well, that sounds like a lot of work and a lot of planning, but it's like, we have the tools at our disposal to be able to do things like this. So like, why not?
I studied or kind of like really paid attention to Mr. Beast. I don't know if you're familiar with this guy. He's like the number one YouTuber, period.
Oh,
Literally every video, he just put a video out like 2 days ago. It already has 75 million views. Like just
holy
insanity.
cow.
He's about to be the first YouTuber to have like multiple billion view videos. So it's just Crazy,
Dang.
crazy. He makes the most money on YouTube of anyone else. Anyway, his kind of philosophy to it is make one really good video per month, or don't put out just a million pieces of content, but like make one really awesome video. Really. So I don't know if you thought about, I mean, having like composition behind it, narrating it almost, I mean, that would be interesting. I'd watch it.
Yeah, well, thanks. And yeah, that's it's so it it's good to think about because I have noticed that, and maybe I'm just a product of the, yeah, like social media, fast moving environment, but it's like when I'm experiencing something or seeing something, it's like I want to share it immediately, right away. And it's like that instant gratification. But then, that just kind of ends up being a bunch of videos of just me kind of selfie style talking into a camera. It's like, well, there's a million videos out there like that, and it's not super high quality, and it's just kind of stream of consciousness thought, which like there, maybe there's it can be interesting, but it's like I know it could be a lot better, but I think it's like that you're not getting the instant gratification, and it requires thought and work, like thought and time. Wait,
Yeah.
which would be worth it? Like you're totally right.
But it's work for sure. I mean, it's definitely like, I don't know. I'm sure you probably didn't set out to become like an influencer or a
No.
videographer and things like that. So it's definitely like an interesting thing. Well, Liz, thank you for joining me. I first heard about you a couple of years ago, actually. A good friend, someone who's become a good friend of mine, Nathan Wright, told me that there was this woman who was attempting the Pinhoti Trail, the fastest known time on the Pinhoti Trail. And he runs the Pinhoti Outdoor Center nearby to where I live. And I've spent many, many hours and many, many miles on the Pinhoti. Love the trail. And was just kind of curious to know well, a lot of things, but one is, how do you go about choosing what it is that you want to do next? I know you just got done with an international race. So how do you
Yeah.
choose? How do you decide what it is that you want to kind of go after, whether it's a fastest known time or it's just something you want to do for fun?
Yeah. Well, I love the Pinhoti Trail, love the community around it. Pinhoti Outdoor Center, they are awesome. They took care of me like when I got sick and had to get off trail. So nothing but love. Yeah, as far as choosing, I mean, I guess some of it just comes down to timing and logistics. So for Pinhoti Trail, I was I was a high school coach for a cross country and track team at the time. And so like busy during the school year. And I was doing personal coaching and stuff like that too. But my schedule was kind of dictated by the school year schedule. So I was like, okay, I have a spring break. So that's, about a week bookended by weekend. So like a little over 7 days. What is out there that I could potentially do in 7 days? And will also just that time of year in March, like what is not going to be covered in snow. And like
Yes.
so just those like kind of fundamental foundational things, just like what is available, what can I do? And then so I started to look at, okay, like what is in the South, what is in the Midwest, or like depending on where. But Pinhoti Trail came up. I first heard about it because Corey Waltering, who we were on our college cross country team together, and then I've just been following his pursuits ever since. And he set a record on the Pinhoti Trail, so that just kind of put it on the map for me. And then I don't know. I mean, it just seemed like again, like the community around it was really awesome. I was also looking at the Benton Mackay Trail, North Carolina, Tennessee. And then I was also looking at the Washita Trail in Oklahoma. I'm gonna get my states right. I think in Oklahoma. And but I don't know. I think the Benton Mackay kind of scared me because it's like you're kind of a little more out there in the wilderness by yourself. There's not it's pretty isolated. There are bears. I mean, you'll find bears on the Pinhoti too, but maybe not as many. So I think it just, I was like, you know what? Pinhoti seems pretty well traveled. There's a great community around it. And that decided that. And then I was just out in Japan. I ran the Okushinanu 100K. And I found that I was looking for Western States qualifiers, and I mentioned I'm in grad school right now, so I was like, well, I can't do anything during the school year, but I am free in June. So, like, what is out there in June? So I just used the Western States qualifying website, or like the page on their website that lists all the qualifying races, and saw that there was a race out in Japan, and I just thought that it was kind of like an excuse to go to Japan, but then also reading more about the race, they formed it just a few years ago, kind of in a response to post-pandemic, the tourism industry. It was around this ski area had really suffered, and the race director did all this research on looking up like old trails that weren't being used anymore, and using the race kind of as a way to bring people into the area, then also kind of rally the community around clearing these trails and reconnecting trails to different parts of the region. So it just seemed like a cool thing to come out and support, and it ended up being really awesome.
Well, it's been fun to kind of follow you a little bit. You did the Pinhoti, set the FKT for a female, I guess, self-supported or yeah. And then
self-supported,
self-supported, and then you did the AT. And you are the current fastest known time holder. And someone I've already had on the podcast, Christian Morgan, at the time of this recording, he is going for the overall record right now as we speak. But you have the female record for the AT. I mean, all this stuff seems really, just for someone like me, or maybe just the average person might be listening to this. That is a lot. The Pinhoti Trail was what, 7 days? The long trail was many days. The AT is now, you're talking about 50 days. How do you where do you begin? Where do you begin with something that seems like it's so massive?
Gosh, so the AT, I have the northbound record for women, and the second fastest time overall for women. Jen Davis has the women's record. I'm like, I should clarify, but I got the northbound time, and so the AT was actually my first through hike, and I was supported, so I wasn't carrying a backpack and stuff like that. But I honestly, it was a very new thing for me. It being trail running, ultra running, multi-day, anything, and it was really just almost theoretical. I was like, oh, I like to run. I'm interested in hiking the AT. I wonder if anyone has ever run the AT. Like, I just had no idea about like the history of all the past FKTs, and it turns out, so, like, of course, people have been running the AT for quite some time now. And I, running with quotations, hiking fast, maybe some running, but I think kind of having that, what am I trying, like, newness to the sport, and almost like a little naivety going into it was a big pro, because I didn't really know what I was in for. I think I was just curious. I was like, oh, well, I've gone for 12-mile runs on trails, and that I'm doing that faster than Carl Sabe. He's the overall record holder of the trail. I was like, I mean, all I have to do, like, I remember I went for a 15-mile training run in Pennsylvania on all the rocks and stuff. My dad dropped me off at, one part, picks me up at another. I was like, so really, I just have to do that times 3, a little more, and that's it. Like, I could do that. Like, it just seemed so simple at the time. But I really had no reason to think that I couldn't do it. So I really think that was an advantage, because I was like, yeah, what, like, why wouldn't I go for Carl's record? Like, I and then I started going for longer training runs. I tried my first 40 plus mile a day on the trail and just kind of jogged all day, and my body felt good. And I was like, oh, like, I actually really like this. This is really fun. And the next day did it again. And the next day did it. It's like, oh, it was just kind of like discovering this thing that I didn't realize I could do. And it just sort of felt like sky's the limit. So I really went into it just having no preconceived notions of what it would be like. And now that I've been through it, which it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and it was very humbling. I mean, to say the least. I mean, I went on the one hand, I went beyond anything I ever thought I was capable of in terms of hiking 18 to 20-hour days and getting 2 to 4 hours of sleep every night. That wasn't part of the plan, but I cared so much that I would do anything to keep going. So yeah, now that I've done it, I know what I'm in for. So it's not like, oh yeah, let's go for a record. It's like, whoa, proceed with caution. So yeah.
So that was almost 4 years ago. That was so in 2020, 51 days, 16 hours and 30 minutes. And that was your first multi-day kind of hike. Or so there's so many things. Obviously, I've done some crazy things that I didn't know if I was even if I could even do it. I just wanted to just go try it. Did you kind of get that sense that I want to give this a try? Did you, in the beginning, did you feel like you would actually finish it and do it? Were you like all in, or you're like, let's just see where it goes, and if I can't do it, no big deal?
Oh no, I was all in.
Wow.
I had been thinking of it and dreaming of it for a long time. I mean, at first the dream was hiking the AT. Then the dream turned into, oh, maybe I could backpack it. Maybe I could try running. So I mean, it evolves over time. But by the time I started the trail, it was like, this is the only thing I'm thinking about and focusing on. And not even, I didn't intentionally say, okay, I'm going to choose to focus on this, but it was just like this all encompassing thing. Like, I felt like I'm like, I don't want to go so far. I was like, it's my destiny, maybe not that dramatic, but it was like but I did feel like this is the thing that like I have to do.
What was one of the more challenging things about doing that?
I was going to say managing expectations, but maybe that's not quite what I mean, but things didn't go as expected. And now that I have more experience, I know enough that like, yeah, these things are never going to go as you plan. It's all about adjusting and kind of rolling with whatever happens. But yeah, I think the hardest thing was when I realized, or when it got to a point where the overall record, the women's overall record, when those were no longer viable, it was like, well, what's my purpose? What am I doing? And do I still want to keep going? And ultimately the answer was yes, but I had been the thought that the record wouldn't happen it never even really crossed my mind because I just felt so sure that I could do it. So that was kind of that was tough. And that this happened in the Shenandoahs in Virginia. And ultimately the thought of stopping was really devastating. The thought of not reaching Katahdin at the northern terminus was really devastating. So I kept going, and I'm really glad I did, but it took a second to get to that conclusion.
Wow. How did your body hold up? What was one of maybe the more something maybe you found out about yourself, about how your body can hold up, whether it was your feet or your just the soreness? What was it that maybe you've learned and been able to take with you through some of these other accomplishments?
I mean, I think the mind is the most powerful thing of all. You're capable physically of so much more than you might think, because like ultimately, I mean, stopping is almost always a choice, no matter how bad you're feeling. And I mean, I hiked through some pretty rough stuff just in terms of blisters on my feet, shin splints. Like I remember, I mean, looking down at my shins, and I could see like the outline of my tendons just puffing up. Like it wasn't good. And I'm not, recommending that necessarily. And I've gone on other hikes since then, and I have not been willing to go that far to push myself through so much. So yeah, so I'm like, wait, what the initial question was physically, like what was the
Yeah, what did you learn about your
what did I
body, about what you could do, maybe couldn't
oh,
do,
yeah.
or what you might do differently?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess what I learned is that, well, like our not just me specifically, but it's like our bodies can like they can take a lot. Like we can go through a lot. And so I guess that's what I learned. Like I guess I learned like my mind, like that's the most powerful thing. Like that's what's going to take you through, barring something like a broken bone or something like that. But yeah, and things I would do differently. I mean, I think just having the experience, I know better now what works for me. Like I started with shoes that just weren't great. Like they worked great in training, but until you do the real thing in terms of all those miles day after day, and I was living out on the West Coast at the time, but actually being on the trails on the East Coast is quite different because it's really rocky and rooty and things I just didn't have when I trained. So yeah, I'm like, oh, well, better footwear could have helped. I think a more conservative approach at the start of the journey would have helped, because I pretty much immediately put myself into a debt of sleep, caloric deficiency. And it's like, you know what? Why don't you just start, just go steady and maybe wait to push until later, just so your body can get adjusted, because it's your body will adjust and adapt it, but just takes a little bit of time.
Like, what do you mean by that? Like adjust to the pain, or adjust to the mileage, the soreness? What are we adjusting to? Everything? Maybe all the
Adjusting
above?
the workload, like just the physical workload. Like I could feel like I had this image as I was like in the earlier stages. I think I felt this maybe around 5 days in, 10 days in, but it's like when you're, yeah, I guess going that many miles over like rugged terrain, all the elevation, it's like my legs were rebelling. And I felt almost like the imagery was thinking of like tempering a sword, or like, yeah, forging iron, or like it's like I am tempering my legs. Like, because they did, I mean, I could feel myself getting stronger as I
Mm.
went. I mean, by the time I got to the White Mountains in New Hampshire, I mean, I felt like a trail monster. Like I was just gobbling up mountains. So it's like you're that. So I guess that's what I mean in terms of adapting. Like it's a huge shock to the system, but like you do get stronger and you do adapt.
Yeah. And it sounds like you have obviously a lot of support too. So every day coming off the trail, what did that look like? Like, what did you? How often? Big meals, nice comfy bed. Like, what? Tell me, tell me what it looked like coming off the trail every day.
So I had a one-person support crew. Warren Doyle. He loves the Appalachian Trail. I met him through taking one of his workshops on like how to hike the AT, basically. But he's hiked the trail 18 times between through hikes and section hikes. But yeah, so uh, we had a support vehicle, so he'd meet me at road crossings throughout the day. The support vehicle was he called it his soccer mom van. It was a minivan, and yeah, at the end of the day, basically he'd like open up the back, and I had a little like platform bed. It was a twin bed. It took up half of the back, and the other half was my bins. I had 3 bins just with my various things. And he didn't cook for me, but he would like bring me McDonald's or heat up a can of Campbell's soup, or like he'd bring me stuff throughout the day. Then I also just had a lot of non-perishable food in the van as well. So yeah, I mean it was a very simple but effective setup. Yeah, I didn't have like a huge crew of people, and also it was 2020, so like originally it was like, oh yeah, my friends can come out. I lived in Oregon at the time, but it's like, oh well, actually that like can't really do that right now. I drove cross country by myself just to get out there at the start. So but I did have my family's on the East Coast, so when I came through Pennsylvania, Virginia, my family came out to see me. They'd bring groceries and stuff, and then we sent out, like we as in me and Warren, on my behalf, he would send an email update once a day on my progress, and you could subscribe as like a newsletter. So as people caught wind of what we were doing, and the support just grew and grew and grew because things were going well, especially through Virginia. I had a really great streak of just like 50-mile a day, 50-mile a day, 50-mile a day. Like and people noticed. So it was really cool. Like the trail running, hiking communities, people came out. Sometimes runners would come out and join me for sections. Other people would just be interested in seeing the setup. Like there was one point where like there were some people just bringing their lawn chairs and hanging out with Warren, waiting for me to come. And then I'd come in and have refill my pack with whatever. Then they'd all pack up their stuff and then follow Warren to the next road crossing, then set up their lawn chairs again. Like it was just kind of like, there was a lot of great support.
So, Liz, you've done like a lot of these multi-day, adventures. I don't know what you would want to call them, but multi-day, adventures. What do you prefer? Do you prefer the kind of like the doing it day after day after day, or you just got done with the 100K? You prefer just, hey, let's knock this thing out. Let me go a little bit faster and let me do it that way. Which one do you like and prefer?
Ooh, I like, so I would almost lump the 100K and multi-day stuff into a similar category, because it's like you start in the morning, you're done at night, and then you get to rest. And I like both of those things. Like I like being out during the day and resting at night. And so for like the multi-day things, I mean, it just depends on how long it is and what kind of time you're going for, because sometimes they do not allow for very much rest. But I found that the stuff that I'm not as into are when it requires just like continuing on through the night and going without sleep for really like for a long time. So like I've tried the 100-mile distance. Like it is not my favorite. I'm like, that's just too long to be on your feet, like unless you're really fast. Like, so yeah. So I'm like, the 100K, the 50-mile, that's like my sweet spot. And then for the kinds of FKTs I've done, like, I mean, I know there are some people out there doing wild things like, oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name now off the top of my head, but there was a guy that just did I think it's the Oregon Coast Trail, and it was like 60-mile day, 60-mile day, 60-mile day. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do that, but 40-mile day, 50-mile day, yeah, that's great.
Does your strategy change? So you just got done with the 100K. Would your strategy change for like a 1-day event that you're going to be done with? Maybe go a little faster, go a little harder versus you're going to do 50 miles and you're going to have to stack a bunch of those up. Is it a different strategy or is it kind of the same?
Oh yeah, I would say definitely different. Yeah, with like a 1-day thing, it's like there's nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Like go for it. With the multi-day thing, I just kind of think low and slow. Like just I'll walk a lot more than I would in a 1-day push.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you when, like, for instance, the race you just finished in Japan, did you find yourself really pushing yourself? Like you really wanted to try to maybe not win, maybe win. Were you trying to really push yourself?
That's a good question. I think my confidence was pretty low going into that race because I just haven't had like a race go totally how I've wanted for a bit. My life for the past 2 years now, I started grad school again. I'm very busy during the school year. I don't have as much time to train. And I think in my head, I'm just like, yeah, I should still be able to do that. Like I should still be able to run a marathon in X time. I should still be, but it's like, but I'm seeing my times start to get slower. And I'm like, oh no. And so it's just, that's been an adjustment. But I tried to tweak my training a little bit this spring and make more time and put the hard work in. But then I still wasn't seeing results, just like in my, in the shorter races I did this spring. And I was just like, but I'm working harder. I'm like, why isn't it showing? So by the time I started this 100K, I think I was just like, well, the cutoff is 21 hours. I know I can hike 3 miles an hour. So 21 hours it is. But I mean, but at the same time, I had in my head, like, well, I think if I had a good day, I think I could finish in 15 or 16 hours. But I definitely took a more conservative approach, especially on there were some really long downhills. For instance, I think there was a literal 10-mile downhill and losing about 3,000 feet within those 10 miles. It was just on a long gravel road. And it's like a few years ago, I might have torn down that road, but this time I was just kind of afraid of destroying my quads and my knees because I wasn't as conditioned as, maybe some races I've done a few years ago. But then in the last 5K or 10K or so of the race, I finally felt, okay, I'm getting pretty close. I can turn it up now. And I tore it up over the last 5 or 6 miles and I felt great. I was amazed that I had so much energy at the end. And maybe that's because I had conserved so much earlier in the race. But I kind of got a taste of like my either my old self or just maybe what I think or consider to be my my true racing self. And I was like, oh, I had more than I thought. So maybe I could have gone for it a little more earlier in the race, but I felt hesitant too.
Yeah, maybe you just didn't. I've felt that way in the past too. Maybe you just didn't know. You're just playing it safe for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, so Liz, it kind of brings me to kind of maybe the question that I've had, since the beginning of this interview is, so you're balancing two things here. You're balancing two things that you seem to love, just from reading a little bit that I've read about you and kind of following you just a little bit. It seems like you've got two, pretty big passions here. And, we've all heard, if you chase two rabbits, you catch none, that kind of thing. Whereas if you really go after, if you really go after two things, you're kind of leaving a little bit on the table for one might pay the bills and one doesn't
yeah,
necessarily. I think that's the boat that a lot of people are in who are trying to
yeah,
do some of the stuff. So just where does kind of all that sit with you right now? You're trying to finish grad school and you have a career. Is that the right word to use? You have a career in music
yeah,
and you have this love that you see that it's taken just the toll with the music and focusing so much on that. Your body is just not where it was maybe a year or two ago. That's what it sounds like.
yeah, yeah.
Where does kind of all that sit with you right now? How do you balance that?
Oh, yeah, it's a very pertinent question because it like these are the things I'm thinking about. Because yeah, sometimes I kind of feel like I'm living a double life, and it's like, well, do I have to choose? I really don't want to choose because I mean, I feel like I need both of these things. So it's like, well, let's figure it out because I mean, I'm not gonna give up either one. And I'm also, yeah, like I'm very ambitious. I have big goals, but it's like, well, if you want to reach those goals, I mean, something has to give. And then between those two passions and yeah, a career, and then there's also just the human aspect of like, well, also like maintaining friendships and a relationship and family. It's like you have those, there are all those things to factor in too. So like what do you do? And I think I'm still trying to figure that out because with some of the disappointments in my running and racing as of late, part of me is like, well, maybe this is a sign. Maybe it's time to focus on music. Maybe it's time to just like keep the running stuff just like a way to keep a healthy balance and lifestyle. But then I I have the 100K I just ran, and that feeling, especially at the end, of just feeling so strong and capable, and it makes me excited for like what could happen next. And I have some big plans on the horizon in terms of hiking. I'm planning to hike the Kungsleden in Sweden. It's not quite 300-mile trail in northern Sweden this August. And then I've been just starting to share like that I'm planning to hike the Pacific Crest Trail next summer. And so it's like, well, what do I want to do with these hikes? Are they pleasure hikes, or is it like all in FKT, pedal to the metal? Like, yeah. So and yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go on a tangent, but when I get a taste of how good it feels to be doing well and to be firing on all cylinders, it's like I want to feel like this, all this, like I love this, I'm all in. Like since I've been back home, I'm like, all right, let's hit the trails, let's train. I have the next school year coming up, and work, piano related work. So it's like, maybe how do we make this that I'm getting the best quality work and education that I can, but while also like knowing how much I care about these running things. So not, I'm just now I'm talking myself in circles now, but it's all very much on my mind.
Do you get the same feeling, that the feeling you just described of those last few miles you just ran, in this last race? Do you ever get that same feeling when you're doing music?
I don't think in the same way. I think with running like that, like scratches a particular itch with on the running side. But with music, I mean that it's like on the one hand, there's the practical side of it. Like I'm great at reading music. I'm a great accompanist. I love working with people. I love collaborating. But then there's also the creative side of it, where music, I mean, it's like a language. When I'm feeling something really strongly, sometimes words aren't enough to encompass what I'm feeling, and that's something music can do. So that's so it's like yeah, I don't know if I get the same feeling from music, but music
Hmm.
also provides this kind of like very strong emotional creative outlet.
Yeah, so music is one of those things where it's I guess it's similar to ultra, in the sense that you have to train, you have to practice,
Yeah.
you write, you fail, you write more, you fail,
Yeah.
and then you have, perhaps, you have performance day. You get to be on a stage, and I've seen
Yeah.
photos of you. You posted photos of yourself singing. I mean, there's one where you're like singing and the rain's coming down on you. It's an
Oh, yeah.
incredible. I love that. That's all awesome. But it seems like you're so into it.
Yeah.
That's for me. I mean, I play music. Not on your level by any stretch, but
I was gonna ask. I'm like, I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if you're a musician.
well,
Yeah.
well, when I'm on a stage and either a microphone's in my hand or a guitar's in my hand or whatever it might be, I do kind of get that feeling of, I crossing the finish line of a 100-mile race and things. I get that kind of exhilaration. So that's why I asked you the question. I don't know if you kind of have similar
Oh
feelings.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, what you're describing, yeah, like I totally feel that. I feel like there's something amazing that happens, and I feel this when I'm like up there with other musicians, but like when you get so like kind of locked in together and in the moment and feeling it and hitting everything just right, and also when you feel your audience with you too, like that whether it's interactive like at a concert, like a festival where people are singing along or cheering or whatever, or in something more like a concert hall where it's like you can't necessarily see your audience, but you can feel that they're just kind of right there with you and hanging on. So yeah, I totally get that, and yeah, it's a great feeling.
Well, I mean, if you're getting that maybe positive reinforcement from two different things, it's pretty obvious why you feel maybe as torn as you do. Um, it's a maybe for people like me, there's probably a lot more people like me versus, well, in the sense that I have a job, obviously, I have to make
Yeah.
money, but
Yeah.
I have this thing that, I've discovered, and I haven't, I used to be athletic in high school and college, but I kind of abandoned it for a long time and just kind of rediscover. I thought marathon was the biggest thing you could ever do. I didn't realize there was ultra marathons. I didn't realize that you
Yeah.
could go past that. And once I
Same.
realized it, and I've heard of Ironman too. Like for me, I had always heard, well, Ironman, if you do an Ironman, that's you, there's nothing bigger than Ironman. That's the biggest thing in the whole world. That's no one could do anything bigger than Ironman. So I spent like a significant amount of time training myself to be able to do an Ironman, and then only to realize that there's more. There's always more.
There's
The
always more. Yeah.
Well, my favorite quote of all time is the old Zig Ziglar quote where he says, "Once you get to the top of the mountain, you can always see further." So there's always going to be more. You're never going to be there, or whatever there is. So, you know, I love this thing and I have this passion for this thing. I think that obviously the community has gotten to be so large that there's a lot of people in that camp. They love this thing, but they're in this other, the reality camp, I guess, that they have to make money and they have to have a job or support a family or whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
how do you kind of marry these two things where
Yeah.
you can get that fulfillment, you can get that feeling, that exhilaration that you're describing, while also taking care of, it's one of my least favorite words in the English language, your responsibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
it's
but I think it's a universal thing as you're describing. Yeah.
I think it's a lot of what I would want to ask you, like, how do you balance that? How you almost like looking for answers for me. And there might be a lot of people listening who are watching along and are like, I want you, Liz, you have the answers. Answer this question for me. How do we do this? And the reality is you something has to give. Um or
No.
or or you're going to be you're never going to hit your full potential at anything. I mean, again,
Yeah.
you chase two rabbits, you're not going to catch any because you cannot, it's impossible to devote. I mean, talking to
Yeah.
Christian, I talked to Christian Morgan about 2 months before he started his most recent attempt. And it's every day. Every
He's all in.
single day. He's up at first thing in the morning. It's so hot and humid where he was. I think he was training in somewhere near
He was,
Indonesia. And he's
I
like,
think he was in time. Yeah.
so he's getting up, he's running 20 miles a day.
Yeah.
He's coming back, he's resting, eating, and then he's going back for a weight workout later in the day.
Yeah.
That's his full-time job, basically. And that's why he's right now he's in the middle of reeling off 55 and 60-mile days and on pace to shatter this record that's
Yeah.
stood for with Carol Sabe. He's about to shatter this record, it seems like. So
Right.
if that's what it takes, there's no hope for me because I can't do that. I can't train like that.
Yeah. I mean, that that's a reality. And I think that's the reality I'm facing too. It's like, maybe a few years ago, women I might have been running side by side with in a race, it's like, well, I took one path, they took another path, maybe like their path, like they're able to devote more time, but it's like, well, and this is coming from just like a position of privilege, I guess. It's like, well, I guess like if that's what I wanted to do, or if that's the kind of lifestyle I wanted to have, I could probably find a way to make that work and like devote all of my time, or a good majority of my time. But it was a choice. I feel very fortunate to have that choice. But like I based on my choices, that's not what I want. And I guess that's the reality. Like I do want to pursue a career in music. Like I do, like I and like I do want this relationship, and not that you can't have a relationship while pursuing all these athletic things, but it's just like, well, that's like these are kind of the cards that in a way like that I dealt myself, so I can't be upset by those choices. Like I'm living the life I want, which is, I mean, that's amazing in itself. So like I feel very, very fortunate for that. And it, but I guess that's the trade-off. So but I guess if there's a takeaway from all the FKT stuff that I've done, you things happen and you just kind of work with what you have. So that maybe that's the mindset I'm taking. I'm like, well, I have this allotment of time And so I'm gonna, what I can do is maximize this time to devote to my training. So if that's an hour a day, like what's the highest quality thing I can do in that hour?
Right.
So yeah, like I was having a conversation with a friend about this, and it's like, well, and going back to what I mentioned, I was like, I feel like I'm working really hard and like I'm not getting the results I want. So it's like, well, I maybe I don't need to keep working harder necessarily, but just be smarter about how I spend the time I do have. So maybe that can be some good like advice.
Yeah, for sure. Liz, thank
Yeah.
you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'll tell everybody. So you're Pink Feathers on Instagram,
Yeah.
pinkfeathers.com. You write a blog. You also have a YouTube channel. You want to share any other socials that you have?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you got it. I'm mostly on, Instagram, and I have my newsletter. I write a weekly-ish newsletter, just kind of sharing, I don't know, like not just the things I'm up to, but just all any whatever philosophical thoughts I have, and that it's just I really enjoy writing that. It's a good outlet. Then my YouTube is Pink Feathers Liz, and that's pretty new, but I've been having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and it looks like you're doing great. You're off to a great start. I'm gonna subscribe, and you also have music. You have a YouTube channel for music, and you have some stuff on Spotify. How do we find you on that?
So
Is that
music,
something you want us to find you? Do you want us to listen to this
yeah,
stuff? Yeah, okay.
yeah. I wrote music under the moniker Pink Feathers. So you can look up Pink Feathers on Spotify and find like some pop music and stuff that I've written. And then more recently, I've been like, I've been in school studying classical music and doing things more in that realm. So I was like, I should probably create some kind of outlet for that. So you can find my more classical oriented music stuff at Liz Derstine on Instagram, and then my YouTube, Liz Derstine, Lizderstine.
And just real quick, just I want to kind of tell everybody through something that you wrote how old I am. You mentioned the band Garbage. It's one of your favorite bands.
Yes.
So I was listening to this when I was in high school. Like their first
Yeah.
album came out when I was in high school, and it was a huge deal. I don't think I'd ever even heard of them since then. So I didn't even know they were still making music and still doing stuff.
Yeah, I caught them on tour. I mean, it was probably about 10 years ago now, but oh, they were still so good. And I must be older than you because I started listening to them in middle school, and I thought Shirley Manson was like the coolest person in the world. So that's where Pink Feathers came from. Their debut album, the background of the album art was a bunch of pink feathers, and Shirley Manson, she's like this badass singer. And then, back in the 90s, she also kept a blog and would talk about her running. And so, like, she ran while she was on tour. And I thought that was so cool. And so, like, Pink Feathers is just sort of my homage to Shirley Manson.
That's awesome. I love it. Liz, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time. Appreciate you joining us. Best of luck to all your
Yeah.
endeavors, music and the running. Definitely going to keep up with you, continue to keep up with you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. It was a great conversation. And I really enjoyed being on the pod. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks. Goodbye, everybody.